going to start with perhaps the most famous transfer rumour to surround Sheffield United ever. One of those folklore moments that we all still talk about when we talk about crazy transfers. Hello and welcome to the Sheff United Way. My name is Hal. As always, if you haven't yet, please do take a moment to subscribe to this channel. It takes literally seconds and it means a great deal to us. Help us build up those subscriber numbers. Today's video, as you'll probably already know from the title, is going to be looking at the transfer rumours that have surrounded Sheffield United over a number of years. Some of these crazier than others. Some of them at the time seemed believable. Others, you really felt they were never going to happen. But I'm pretty sure you'll know maybe all, more likely some of these. We're going to start with perhaps the most famous transfer rumour to surround Sheffield United ever. One of those folklore moments that we all still talk about when we talk about crazy transfers, particularly if you're speaking to someone who doesn't support Sheffield United. Diego Maradona. We've got to go back to 1978. The then United manager, Harry Haslam, watched Diego Maradona, who was 17 years old, in action on a scouting trip in Argentina. And Harry was so impressed, he immediately arranged a £200,000 deal. A lot of money back in 1978. But the transfer fell through when the Blades, who were a second division club at that time, failed to stump up extra cash on top of the fee. And there's a few people that have speculated that extra cash was a bit sneaky. The deal had been agreed, and then suddenly the Argentinian club want a little bit more than was initially agreed. So Haslam instead signed Maradona's countryman, the River Plate midfielder Alex Sabella, for a lesser fee, £160,000. Sadly, although Alex Sabella wowed the Bramall Lane crowd, he was absolutely fantastic, a true legend of the game. He could not prevent the Blades sliding into the third division. That, of course, happened the following season, 78-79. Sabella was offered to rivals, Leeds United, for £400,000 in 1980. And United, as we know, slipped even further down the league later into the fourth division. Meanwhile, of course, Diego Maradona went on to be regarded as one of the greatest footballers of all time. When we talk about Argentinian legends, you might not know this one, Ricky Villa, who of course is known for playing for Tottenham Hotspur, but Sheffield United apparently had an option to sign Villa during that same scouting trip to Argentina, but the Blades pulled out. So Keith Birkinshaw, then Tottenham manager, decided to pounce. OSSIE ARDILES was also another player that the Blades apparently looked at, Harry Haslam and the travelling United party, in that 1978 trip, but turned their nose up, weren't interested. Both Ardiles and Villa were apparently there for Sheffield United to sign, but for whatever reason, the club didn't make that decision, and Birkinshaw for Tottenham bought the pair instead. How different things could have been. You'd probably argue Sheffield United wouldn't have continued to slide through the divisions if they'd got two, perhaps, of those Argentinian players I've just mentioned. If we move into England legends, Paul Gascoigne was a target for Sheffield United in the mid-90s. I remember this one really carrying some weight, had a bit of legs around it. There were certainly people talking when Gazza was at Rangers that he could join Sheffield United because Howard Kendall was Blades manager, and he'd inquired about a move for the England midfielder, particularly after Gazza had done so well. Euro 96 was still fresh in our memories. Rangers, though, wanted to hold on to Gazza for a little longer and said no to Sheffield United's approach. Gazza, though, would end up at Bramall Lane, but playing for Middlesbrough. Here's another one I remember. Seems like only yesterday, just makes me feel old. Georgie Kinkladze. Adrian Heath was a huge admirer of Kinkladze, tried to sign the Georgian international. He had an incredible left foot. I remember him taunting Roger Nielsen at Bramall Lane when playing for Manchester City. A goal-scoring midfielder. Adrian Heath was Blades manager in 1999, and when Kinkladze's time at Main Road was clearly coming to an end, he thought he could persuade him to join the Blades, and maybe things would have been very different for Inchy, but Kinkladze opted for Derby County instead. And actually, perhaps that was a good decision that the Blades didn't get Georgie Kinkladze, because he wasn't the same player when he played for Derby. Another one that came out slightly more recently, but we didn't hear about it at the time, Didier Drogba. Former Blades boss Neil Warnock was apparently offered Didier Drogba, not a huge sum as well, £100,000, around about 2006. Neil Warnock, apparently with the chance to sign the Ivorian striker from then French second division side Le Mans, decided against it. The Blades have, boss then at the time, revealed that Laurent Jaffo, who was scouting, said that Drogba could be a decent signing. Apparently, Laurent Jaffo also recommended PASCAL CHIMBONDA, but again, Neil Warnock, who would end up managing PASCAL CHIMBONDA, decided against that one. But Warnock said no money was available, so it didn't matter who was recommended. Also, makes you wonder why we even needed scouts. Neil Maupay, in the summer of 2019, the striker, I mean, all the talk was about which forward Sheffield United would sign for all our available cash before eventually dropping them and reverting for Sharp and Didsey. But the suggestions seem to be that the club were hot on Brentford's frontman, Neil Maupay. He's just a player that I think United fans kind of expected to sign for another club, even though we were talking about him. Here's one of the headlines from the ever-reliable publication The Sun from July 2019. Neil Maupay is set to become Sheffield United's £15 million record buy after Brentford slashed the asking price for their French striker. So the Bees originally wanted 22 million for Maupay, but then lowered their valuation because of the Hitman's attraction to the prospect of playing only in the Premier League. Maupay was just 22 at the time. He'd bagged 28 goals in 49 appearances, but the issues became clear once another transfer nemesis for Sheffield United got into the mix. Aston Villa, who I've always thought their scouting department seemed to get their signing suggestions from peeking over the exam desk of Sheffield United. Matty Cash, remember that one? The Dean Smith connection, it made sense. Maupay's former manager. The smart money was on him signing with the Villa, but he chose Graham Potter's Brighton and Hove Albion for £20 million, a fee that United could compete with. But the wages most likely proved the sticking point. Here's another one, similar ilk. Ollie Watkins, a Blades transfer target before signing for Aston Villa in September 2020. Chris Wilder has since explained why Sheffield United were interested, but realistically were never going to beat Aston Villa to the signing of Watkins, who had scored 26 goals to help Brentford to the Championship playoff final the season before. He was at a great age, just 24, but Villa offered a deal which even now could rise to £33 million, with reported wages of £70,000 a week. Wilder said, you look at Ollie Watkins coming out of the Championship and going for that price, it's a huge fee, and this is the key line, and it's not just the fee, it's the wages as well. We have to keep a cap on wages, and thus endeth the chase. Honestly, wages and transfer fees, in my humble opinion, getting out of hand. And I think we do need to restructure the way deals are done. We could cap wages, transfer fees, or look at the trade model in the United States. Just a few kind of back of the napkin suggestions. Let me know in the comments what you think could be done, because I do think it's going to get harder and harder for certain smaller clubs to compete. Darwin Nunez, at the time of recording, this one is very much a live transfer rumour in the press, but not, unfortunately, for Sheffield United. But then Premier League Sheffield United were linked with the Benfica forward. We've got to go back to 2020. At the time, the Uruguayan was playing for Almeria and had just scored 16 goals in the Spanish second division. The Blades were linked with, and this is not a ridiculous fee, £12.8 million. But the player at the time of recording, even now, only 22, signed for Benfica, where he's netted 32 goals in 57 league appearances. The Blades would sign Ryan Brewster shortly after this Nunez rumour surfaced. Jorge Jesus, Nunez's manager at Benfica, has said Nunez will become the best player in the world. The Blades missing out on another best player in the world? There are some that believe the transfer rumour had no real credibility and it was created following a fans football manager game, whereas others state Nunez was a genuine target for Chris Wilder. Either way, he's now valued at around €100 million. So unless Sheffield United sign him in his kind of twilight Ian Rush years, I think it's very unlikely we will ever see Darwin Nunez play in red and white at Bramall Lane. Rumours that seem to spring from various quarters and simply wouldn't go away for ages include Lukas Podolski. If you try and search for where that rumour came from, you won't find anything. Dan Burn, a genuine rumour, seemed like we were chasing him for a long time. Chris Wilder loved the chase for a player, whether they'd eventually work out, Ricky Holmes, or not. Loved the chase. Sam Morsy, so many times we heard about him as a potential player in midfield for Sheffield United. Jason KOUMAS, another bit further ago, but of course a player that I think would have done really, really well at beautiful downtown Bramall Lane. And my personal favourite, not just because I look like him, but I think it was just so ridiculous when the Blades had got promoted, most recently to the Premier League. It came out seemingly of nowhere, but for some reason, you saw on almost every tweet, whenever the club posted anything, fans would say, announce Ribéry. Franck Ribéry, the French winger. Where did that come from? Absolutely no idea. But of all the transfer rumours, I've left that one to last because that was my favourite. And of course, last season, I did play with Sheffield United loanee Lys Mousset at Salernitana, but not to grace Bramall Lane. So those are just some of the craziest ever Blades transfer rumours. I've probably missed a fair few that are your favourites. Pop those in the comments. Thanks for watching.